Mitsubishi would quite like it if you thought of them as Japan's answer to Land Rover, with a range of cars that are mainly SUVs. And they've just added another one to the range.
This is the bold-looking Eclipse Cross. The Eclipse part comes from a small Mitsubishi sports car that was never on sale here in the UK, while the Cross refers to the car's crossover aspirations. It's based on the same platform as the Outlander and sits between that car and the ASX, and rivals the SEAT Ateca, the Peugeot 3008 and the Toyota CHR.
And the bold design continues in here, but of course bold is a relative term, and whilst this might be quite out there for a Mitsubishi, it's certainly not as wacky as the interior and say the Peugeot 3008. However, they have definitely tried to do something a little bit different, and there are some nice things in here like this touchpad for the infotainment system. However, the quality in here just can't touch that of the Peugeot 3008. There's a lot of very hard plastics on display. And the whole look and feel just doesn't seem very coherent. So you get this, modern looking touchpad and the infotainment screen, and then you get heated seat controls that look like they might have come from a Shogun of 20 years ago. But one thing you won't be complaining about is storage. There's absolutely stacks of it. There's a good sized glove box, really large cup holders and a handy tray down here. This storage compartment is enormous, and so are the door bins too. But one thing I do need to point out is that no Eclipse Cross comes with sat-nav, which just seems quite an alarming admission these days, doesn't it? However, what Mitsubishi say is that most people now use the maps on your phone, which is why it comes with both Apple CarPlay and Android Auto fitted as standard across the range. And when I think about it, they probably do have a point.
There are 3 versions of the Eclipse Cross on offer, called rather helpfully the 2, the 3 and the 4, with the first edition at launch. 2 gets the Android Auto and Apple CarPlay connectivity, 16-inch alloys, climate control, a forward collision alert system, automatic high beam, cruise control and lane departure warning. 3 is the pick with its head-up display, 18-inch alloys, dual-zone climate control, front and rear parking sensors, heated seats, reversing camera and keyless entry. 4 throws in a panoramic sunroof, a 360-degree camera, along with an upgraded stereo system, while first edition gets extra badges, body trim and unique red paintwork.
Back here things are slightly more compact than with some of its rivals, but you will fit 3 adults across here comfortably, and because there's no huge transmission tunnel in the middle, whoever sits in the middle seat gets decent legroom too. One thing that isn't great though is headroom. I'm only 5'4" and it's pretty tight. If you have a 6-footer in here, they're probably going to end up having to slouch a little bit. You get a couple of Isofix child seat points, and the rear seats will slide back and forwards so you can prioritise cabin space or room in the boot. With the seats back to give maximum legroom, you'll find that boot room is only average. A Peugeot 3008 is definitely larger, and in fact, even when they're forward, it isn't that great either. However, it's a nice wide opening. This opens really nice and tall, which is handy. There's a low load lip, and when you do fold the seats down, they fold completely flat.
There's just a 1.5 litre petrol engine with 161 brake horsepower on offer at the moment, with a 2.2 litre diesel likely to arrive later. But the transmission options are rather more varied. In 2-spec you can have front-wheel drive and a 6-speed manual gearbox only, while the 3 comes with manual and 4-wheel drive, or a CVT automatic gearbox with front and 4-wheel drive. Meanwhile, the 4 gets the same transmissions, with the exception of the front-wheel drive auto and the first edition front drive and a manual gearbox, or 4-wheel drive with the CVT auto.
I do hope you're keeping up. We've got the 4-wheel drive automatic here, and it's pretty decent. The engine's punch kicks in low down the range and you'll make perfectly smooth, quite rapid progress. Rev the engine out though, and the 4-cylinder motor's thrum switches from being characterful to something approaching rather thrashy. And as for this CVT, well, it isn't the best. Mitsubishi has tried to simulate a normal automatic with fake gear changes, but the reality is that it just holds onto the revs too long and it's just not very enjoyable. We'd suggest sticking to the manual unless you think an automatic gearbox is totally necessary.
Unlike the Peugeot 3008 and some small SUVs, the Eclipse Cross comes with four-wheel drive, although it's called Super All-Wheel Control. It controls torque to each wheel, sending power where it's needed most. A selectable driving mode can change how it responds, and there are auto, snow and gravel modes, and it works well.
The ride is pretty fun, but it doesn't feel uncomfortable. The steering, though, does feel quite lifeless, although that does seem to be the norm in the small SUV class. But it corners well, and there certainly isn't as much body roll as you might expect.
The biggest issue with the Eclipse Cross is that 1.5-litre petrol engine. While it's smooth, it's not cheap to run. The most frugal is the front-wheel drive manual, and Mitsubishi says this will do 42.8 miles to the gallon. Now that's not great when the Toyota CHR 1.2 does 47.9 miles to the gallon, a 1-litre petrol SEAT Ateca 54.3 miles to the gallon, and a 1.2-litre Peugeot 3008 manages over 55. Despite this though, it's a likeable small SUV and does a good job of trying to stand out in a crowded market. But its sole petrol engine option is limiting, and it needs the diesel to appeal to more people. But with Mitsubishi's reputation for strong reliability and the fact that this is a proper four-wheel drive small SUV, it's worthy of consideration.